All right, so I wanted to make this video to talk about inside edge, inside ankle bone low versus the outside edge and being inside ankle bone high, and just add my own thoughts and perspective to it. I think the GOATA coaches like Ricky, Coach Gill, and Gary, they do a really good job of explaining the differences between the two with words. And then even they can, show you with their hands, right? Like the foot shaped like a dome. You've got the tibia on top that acts as a gyroscope. And then when things are collapsed inside, the tibia gets locked up, right? It can't turn like it should. And so they do a really good job, I feel like, explaining it. I just, through my journey on this, kind of found my own way, I guess, to kind of explain it to myself, to where I could see it and feel it for myself. And I think it's worth adding into the conversation because you don't just need to talk about it. Like, you can show someone what it looks like and why it's a problem when you are inside ankle bone low. So to get stuff started, let me just get my camera down here so we can see. So first, we gotta establish what inside ankle bone high and low looks like, right? And I'm still working on mine. Right here is gonna be inside ankle bone high. I've got the pressure out here on the outside edge of my foot. A lot of us, including myself as of right now, we hang out down here. This is inside ankle bone low. I call this half collapsing because you can be even further collapsed and furthermore on the inside edge of the foot, right? A lot of us kind of hang out in the middle here. And then when we do activities like play or sport, walk or run, then you're really looking at a full collapse in the arch, right? So that's the difference. Inside ankle bone low is here and here. And then put the pressure on the outside edge of the foot, boom, inside ankle bone high. So what is the problem with being inside ankle bone low? Why does it lock the shin up? Well, we can feel it for ourselves. When I go inside ankle bone low, if you just do it yourself, I'm gonna do my best to try to show it. So keeping the pressure on the inside edge of my foot, try to move your knee around. You're gonna feel, and my knee just kind of stays straight the whole time, but there's not a whole lot of range of motion, right? When we're on that inside edge. And it's really hard, it even hurts to try to push the knee out. And if you notice, being on the inside edge, it's a lot easier, and I wouldn't say it feels better, but the path of least resistance is for the knee to collapse inside, right? Because that's just where it wants to go. So when we're inside ankle bone low, it's pretty much impossible to set our bow, to get the knee out, and so that's why it collapses. It's just the path of least resistance. Now, if we go inside ankle bone high, now, and everything's still on the ground, my heel is on the ground, pressure is just on the outside edge. Now move the knee around. There's a bit more range of motion there, right? And what you'll notice is that your knee naturally wants to go out. It feels good to go out and hit that 22.5 degrees. And then if you try to collapse it inside, it just can't. As long as you're keeping the dome structure good in the foot and keeping the pressure on the outside edge, staying inside bone high, like, you can't get the knee inside. It won't collapse. And it just feels natural to be out here. Now, if you take it a step further, so when we are playing our sport, walking or running, and the heel is off the ground and we're inside ankle bone high, now the knee has tons of range of motion. And again, it's just more natural for it to be out here where we can set our bow, right, versus collapsing inside. That just hurts to try to get in that position. So I feel like this really can add a different perspective for a lot of people because, you can really try it out and feel it on yourself. You don't need to necessarily take the Goata coach's words for it. You can, but I feel like it adds a different perspective that's valuable if you're trying to teach it to yourself or someone else. Just try it out. You'll see that inside ankle bone low doesn't offer a lot, you know, as far as movement goes, and it really does limit what you can do, and it just funnels everything else up the chain to collapse inside, because that's the only place it has to go. Whereas if we are inside ankle bone high, right, we're more secure in the foot, but then it allows actual proper movement to take place up the chain where the knee can go out, right, which is just the shin bone is going to be turning out. We can set our bow and then corner, and then you're moving really well. So the next thing I want to talk about is inside ankle bone low and why it causes injuries, especially the ACL tear. So when we're collapsed inside like that, as we saw before, you know, when you try it out on yourself, things just collapse inside. Your shin bone gets stuck, right? The knee collapses in. And we rep this out in our everyday life, and then on top of weight room training, right? So a lot of times during injury, you'll see the player, they'll heel strike pretty much 99% of the time, and then the foot comes down, you see the collapse of the ankle bone, right? So they're inside ankle bone low. Okay, well now we know where the knee's gonna go, right? So it's gonna collapse inside. And then at this point, things kind of get a little more complicated, because now we're talking about how energy is moved in the body, and you get to spirals, which is a huge term in Goata. And the easiest way that I can think of spirals is just the way that your body takes in energy is going to do the opposite to kick it out, okay? So if you were to throw a punch to somebody, you know, who's in front of you, let's say, you're not just going to come from here and try to punch them, right? It's not going to be very powerful. What you're going to do is bring the arm back to gain momentum, right? And then release it forward. So you're kind of you're doing the opposite movement, right? To then do the real movement that you want to do. And then it's the same thing if someone, you know, was behind you that you're going to punch, right? You're going to go forward to gain momentum and then pop it back. So when we land on the ground, everything's collapsed in. So we're taking energy in. We're starting with an in position. So the body's naturally gonna try to kick it out, right, when we push off. So when we're in that inside ankle low position, things come in, collapse inside, everything, and then we try to push off. And here's where things get really messed up, is we know that the shin bone is locked, right? With the foot being collapsed, the shin bone's locked. So you're trying to push off and your shin bone can't turn out, it's locked. Your hip, however, does have a little bit more freedom than your shin, because it's still locked up, but not as bad as your ankle joint. So now your hip tries to turn open, it tries to come out when you're pushing off the ground in that position. So now you've got your shin bone, can't move, it's stuck turning one way, and then you've got your hip turning the other way. So it's just both bones are going opposite ways, and then you've got that teeny little ACL in between there, right? And of course it gets shredded, because you know your muscles and the bones are just working opposite of each other, unfortunately. So that's where injury really comes into play, being inside ankle bone low. And I hope that adds, you know, a good perspective about that. If we look at the opposite, when look at inside ankle bone high, then not only is it more secure for the joint, but the muscles and the bones can move as one, right? So when you set your bow, the femur and the tibia are going to externally rotate out, right? Your knee is going to be pointing 22.5 degrees. You're going to land, and taking the energy from out and then corner it, spiral it inward, right, and kick it out. That's how they teach it in Goata. And so you've got the shin and your femur working together, right, in one as they turn from out, in, all because, you know, made possible by being inside ankle bone high rather than being inside ankle bone low. Everything's collapsed, funnels inside, and then your hip tries to work against that because that's just how it's trying to get rid of the energy, and it can't. And I mean, you know, sometimes if you're lucky, when you're in that position, maybe you don't tear an ACL, but you tear something else like a hamstring, and it's super unfortunate. But that's really all I wanted to talk about and explain. I feel like the words and, you know, showing it on hand is one thing. And it's funny because, you know, most of us are WOTA, so we're in this collapsed position anyways, and you think we would be more able to kind of feel it, be aware of it, but we're just so normal to it, you know, we don't really recognize. So I feel like trying it out on yourself, you know, just see what happens, right? Put yourself inside ankle bone low. You can see that the knee can't go anywhere. Things are locked up. Go inside ankle bone high, boom. You know, there's a lot more freedom and security that goes with that. So we can try it out on ourselves, really get a feel for what it means and what it does to our bodies. And that's really it. I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys later.